Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be giving you a brief introduction about Ayurveda. Ayurveda is an ancient science that originates around the same time as yoga originated. So Ayurveda is commonly referred to as a sister science to yoga. So these practices are complementary, meaning that usually a practitioner of yoga would also practice Ayurveda, and Ayurveda predominantly as a lifestyle. So in Ayurveda, there's an ancient proverb which is probably like 6,000 years old, which says that if your lifestyle is not good, medicine is of no use. If your lifestyle is good or correct, medicine is of no need. So the idea being that lifestyle is the most important part of health and well-being according to Ayurveda. So, thus, even though it is commonly referred to as an alternative medical system or a medicinal system, more than it being a system of medicine with different herbs and different treatments to treat various diseases, it is a lifestyle that allows us to come into a state of balance, health, and well being. In the same way that we see yoga as the science of the self, of understanding the self, understanding the mind, and coming into a state of balance with our mind and body, in that way, Ayurveda is seen as a way in which we come into balance with the environment around us. So it's not only focusing on the self, but focusing on the relationships between the self and his or her environment. In Ayurveda, there is this understanding that everything in our environment is simultaneously a medicine and a poison. What this means is that a food or a supplement can be a poison when it is consumed excessively at the wrong time, mixed with the wrong kinds of foods, with the wrong lifestyle, and so on. And simultaneously, it can also be made into a medicine having positive healing qualities for us when it is consumed in the right amounts, in the right combinations, and so on and so forth. It is estimated that Ayurveda was discovered or invented as a medical system about 6,500 years ago. This was done in the Indus Valley civilization in ancient India, and this was the time when agriculture was being invented or discovered, and thus the domestication of plants and animals coincided with the creation of this medical system. So we use mainly a lot of different herbs and plants. And in the ancient past, Ayurveda actually derives from an older medical system known as Siddha medicine. The word Siddha means immortal. So this immortal medical system was mainly used by yogis, monks, and nuns, basically people that wanted to prolong their lifespan to live as long as they possibly could so that they could attain enlightenment in one lifetime. And this medical system used a lot of heavy metals, because the idea being that metals are they don't decompose the same way as animal and plant matter does, and so if we can harness the qualities of these metals into us, we can then create longevity, decay less, and so on. However, over time, these the how the metals were used back then, around 7-8 thousand years ago, was eventually lost through various invasions that came into the Indian subcontinent, both from the east and the west, caused these systems to sort of decay. Even today, there are traces of these people using metals to heal. However, this can also cause a lot of toxicity and can be a very fine line, can be very dangerous if the person doesn't know how to use the correct procedures. Thus, it is better now to leave metals aside and we come to Ayurveda, which is mainly using herbs and herbal supplements. Ayurveda believes that when we have a disease, a prevention of the disease is far more effective than curing a disease. So today our modern medical system is mainly based around cure. So we get some problem, say it is diabetes or cancer, some kind of chronic health issue, and then we go to the medical system, to the doctors to help cure us from that disease. The thing is that today we don't spend enough money in our healthcare systems on preventing those diseases in the first place. This would greatly reduce our medical bills and boost our healthcare sector. However, the problem is that through prevention, you never really recognize the power of a particular medical system, lifestyle, and so on. Let me give you an example to explain this. Imagine the COVID pandemic. The COVID pandemic, as we all know, spread throughout the world, and many of us were hostages inside our own house. We couldn't leave our home, we couldn't work, we couldn't go out to nature, and so on and so forth. And it was a difficult time for a lot of us. So during this COVID pandemic, all of us were quite, or many of us were quite looking forward to a cure, something that would cure us of this pandemic, that would take away this pandemic. Whether for some people they saw the cure in the vaccine, for other people they saw the cure in building herd immunity. But we all basically wanted this period to end and the COVID pandemic to roll over. Now, because we had all gone through so much difficulty, so much suffering, and so on, when somebody created that cure, we looked up to that person, and that person was great. They managed to get rid of this COVID pandemic. However, if somebody, say in Wuhan, China, there was a health official who was very proactive, and this person actually prevented the virus from spreading out of Wuhan, so they stopped the virus in its tracks, they didn't allow it to spread, they called an early lockdown, and the virus, say, was contained within Wuhan itself and never became a global pandemic. This person actually would have done a lot of good for the global economy, would have done a lot of good for mental health around the world, and so on. However, this person would not be recognized. Today, this person would not have been a hero because we wouldn't have known the suffering and the difficulty that the pandemic could have caused us. And so we don't know what he really saved us from, and thus it just is forgotten in history. We would have continued life as normal and nobody would have ever thought of it again. So this is the point I'm trying to make, is that when a medical system or a lifestyle helps us to prevent a disease, it is actually a lot more powerful than when it helps us to cure a disease, because it will eradicate the suffering. We don't have to go through the suffering that a chronic health issue will cause us. However, because we don't go through that suffering, we have no idea or no clue of what we have escaped, and thus we do not give preventive medical systems or preventive lifestyles its due worth. Apart from using a medical system as a preventive measure or a cure, in Ayurveda we also use lifestyle and medicine as a way to boost our longevity. So longevity in Ayurveda is measured in health span and not lifespan. Lifespan being the number of years we live up to, but health span being the number of years we can live up to while still being healthy and vital, without the need to be dependent on others, with the capacity to live independently, to move well, to not be obstructed, not needing life supporting medication all the time, and so on. So we in Ayurveda is trying to increase our health span so that we can minimize the number of years that we spend in intensive care, that we spend on life dependent medication and surgeries and so on, where we can be still healthy right into our old age. This is what Ayurveda considers to be very important, and the whole goal of this medical system. Another key difference between modern medicine and Ayurveda is that modern medicine looks at symptomatic causes of disease, which means that a disease has a set of symptoms, and if a patient is struggling with those set of symptoms, that is a reliable indicator to say that, okay, this person has such and such disease because they are displaying these symptoms. However, in Ayurveda, the understanding is that we cannot simply go about healing or treating the symptoms. Somebody gets a fever, have a paracetamol. Somebody gets a cold, have another kind of cough syrup or something like that. So we are not treating the symptoms, giving medications only for the symptoms, but we are trying to change the root causes of what is causing this symptom to arise. If I'm getting a skin issue and a skin rash, rather than simply putting a cream over my skin hoping that the skin rash will go away, in Ayurveda I'm trying to understand why this skin rash originated. For instance, there is some excessive heat in my body which is causing the skin rash. This heat might be associated with an inner organ like the liver, for instance. And so I'm trying to understand what organ has been compromised, what problem, maybe there's a problem with my blood, and trying to get deeper into the root cause of how my lifestyle, my living, my mental and emotional health might all be contributing to these symptoms arising. So it's not simply enough for me to just take medications that brush these symptoms under the carpet, so to speak, but I am trying to really understand the root cause and make lifestyle changes to deal with or address those root causes. This brings me to the next point, which is that Ayurveda sees our health and well being as both physical as well as mental and emotional. So, the physical and mental and emotional combine together to create a holistic lifestyle, a holistic way of being. So, Ayurveda would, for instance, not recommend us to go to a physiotherapist for muscular pains and issues and go to a psychotherapist for our mental and emotional well being. In Ayurveda, we would combine these two such that any physical symptoms in Ayurveda, it's believed has an underlying emotional or mental root cause. So, all the symptoms that originate in our physical body also have a corresponding emotional mental root cause. Sometimes through a lot of stress, through depression, through certain negative emotions, we might develop physical problems, physical ailments, and so on. So there is this connection between the physical and the mental and emotional. It is very interesting today that in the last 5 to 10 years, modern neuroscience, especially in trying to understand the gut, has told us that there is this bi-directional connection between the brain and the gut. So there is a connection between my feelings, my emotions, my levels of stress, and the functioning of my gut, the production of hormones, and so on. So, for instance, if one is stressed for a prolonged period of time, one goes through a lot of mental, emotional stress, one has a difficult phase in their life, a difficult period in their life. This will affect the hormones being produced in their body. This will affect the functioning of their gut, their digestion process, their ability to absorb nutrients, which will in turn affect their energy levels, their vitality, which will affect how they feel in their body. So everything in this way is interconnected. It's also interconnected in the opposite way. If somebody is constantly eating junk food, is spending a lot of time outside, this will affect the bacteria in their gut. As it starts to affect the bacteria in their gut, it will in turn affect the production of hormones. Certain hormones maybe will be produced in a smaller amount like serotonin and so on, and this will in turn affect the kind of or create the kind of emotions that they experience. Maybe they might experience more emotions of sadness, depression, and so on. So, in this way, there is a bi directional connection between our mental and emotional states and our physical state. So, in Ayurveda, to cure or heal the person, we have to target both the mental, emotional, and the physical simultaneously. So, it's not enough to say that this is a physical issue or this is a mental, emotional issue, but that all issues are simultaneously both. We cannot uh, we cannot dissect or diversify the two. The last thing I would like to speak about today is the gut bacteria itself. I've spoken briefly now about the gut bacteria, and many of you might be thinking, what does it really mean, the gut bacteria? While some of you might already know this. So, we have a lot of bacteria in the gut, and the gut is composed of the organs of the stomach, the small intestine, large intestine, colon, bladder. So, all the organs that are responsible for the digestive process, for our digestion. So, in our gut, there resides a lot of bacteria. It is estimated some 30 to 100 trillion bacterial cells reside in the human body. Just to give you some context, we have about 20 to 30 trillion human cells. So, in this sense, we have more bacterial cells inside of us than we have human cells. Thus, as Ayurveda sees us more as a human ecosystem than a human being. So, Good health and vitality arises when we take care of this ecosystem, when we create the conditions for the thriving of the right kinds of bacteria within us. And the thriving of this right kind of bacteria within us is created when conditions are right, and those conditions meaning not only our diet but also the way we sleep, how much we exercise, the kind of atmosphere we live in, what kind of emotions we have on a regular basis. All of this impacts the bacteria in the gut, which impacts the digestion, our metabolism, our sense of vitality, well-being, and so on. Stay tuned for my upcoming video. In my upcoming video, I'm going to speak more deeply about the gut bacteria, how the gut affects the brain, how stress affects the gut, and what exactly is happening in this gut brain connection that we speak of. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Please leave your comments, hit the subscribe button, and I would love to see you again. Namaste.